Hello, everyone, and welcome today to the McLaren Strategic Solutions podcast. Across Karnataka, a quiet revolution is taking place. It's led by women, supported by purpose, and empowered by skill. Two significant forces are coming together to make this happen. On one hand, you have the brilliant or the ambitious Nipuna initiative by the government of Karnataka. And on the other hand, you have the women's cells that are creating empowering spaces for women to learn, lead, and leap into the future. Today, we'll explore these two forces, policy and grassroots support, and how they're coming together to equip women with the tools, confidence, and community they need to thrive in tomorrow's workforce. I'm your host, Vishal Desai, and today we'll be diving in deep into what makes these initiatives tick. I'm joined by two incredible women. Dimple George, the country head of McLaren Strategic Solutions.
Hi, Vishal.
She heads the India strategy and growth, but more than that, she's also a social entrepreneur, very close to skilling initiatives and a number of different social causes within Karnataka and the broader ecosystem. We also have Sridevi Rugi, a talent acquisition leader who is also co-founder at Writer Destiny and the Himalayan Space Center. She's also active contributor to the Women's Cell, something she does in addition to her co-work to help more women access upskilling and mentorship. Today, we'll talk about what's working, what's changing, and generally learn more about these initiatives. And more than that, give you a sense of how you can participate in driving change, both at the policy as well as the grassroots level. With that, let's get started. So let me start with you, Dimple. Tell us a little bit about the Nipuna initiative. What is it about? What problem is it trying to solve for workforce within the state?
Thank you, Vishal, firstly. And I think it's been a great pleasure to have both of you and to share space along with Rugi. And there's a lot of learning that we have gone through as women, right? And I think one such initiatives that we feel very empowered by the government of Karnataka is the Nipuna. So Nipuna happens to be very closely knit and working with corporates and the government and the academia for women from every strata, and not limiting them to any of the, the social community challenges that they have. So we get into the space where we are, in partner with the government, and we are looking at upskilling them, right? And our focus, since McLaren works very closely with BFSI, supply chain, and with the healthcare space, so we have chosen domains and skills that can help the women folk. And then it's not just getting them out of the college and just directly throwing them into the ocean, but we are the ones that bridge that gap where we can upskill them in AI, which is the in thing right now, and also on the cloud space, blockchain, AI, AR. So these are the things that we are working with them very closely. And Nipuna happens to be a collaborative, not only with just the academia and the government, but also with other corporates. So we already have 100 plus, people who have enrolled into this, and, companies like Infosys, Bosch, Dell, IBM, they've been very active. So we, at this point, as McLaren, trying to make sure that we join that community together for a common cause to uplift the community for the women.
That's excellent. Let me jump to you, Rugi. There's this idea of Nipuna, and then there is the idea of the women's cell. What does the women's cell do to support these initiatives? Is it just related to Nipun, or is it a broader initiative of which Nipuna Karnataka is one of those? Can you just tell us a little bit about how the women's cell fits into this idea of skilling women and getting them ready?
Sure. Thanks for having me here, Vishal. So, great contribution in terms of how we've heard and are seeing the Nipuna transform in terms of women at work. We call it the WOW initiative with KDM. The reason why we have this women's cell named WOW is to empower women to come back to work. Predominantly, it could be freshers, non-working women talent, and or people who've taken sabbatical. With that idea, this Women at Work initiative I think it's kickstarted about 2 years ago. And the whole idea is to introduce a lot of programs for women, especially in tier 2 cities. We have different clusters, like one in Mysore. Currently, I'm part of the Hubli Dharwad Belgaum region. Likewise, one for Mangalore. We have 6 clusters within Karnataka, and we have different women leaders who have to make sure that there are other women who get part of the corporate jobs, and through Nipuna initiatives, they get the bridge the gap really.
Yeah. So let me ask you this from the standpoint of this, right? Like, so I've got family, I'm married, so I know what it is like for women to get back to work and how difficult sometimes it can get for that to put together. But just from the audience perspective, right? What challenges do women face? So it seems like there are two segments, right? Like, so there's one segment where you've got women and upskilling women from academia, possibly from rural backgrounds, whatever, into getting into their first job perhaps, right? Like, or getting into the workforce. And then you touched upon the subject of re-entry, which means at some point of time, they were part of the workforce, they were skilled, but they had to take a break at some point of time and moved it. So there are two flavors to this argument, it would seem like, right? Can you add a little more dimension to it? So what challenges exist in both these spectrums?
Sure. So from a study per se, women taking curriculum in terms of the education or the graduation part, right? There are a lot of women who are comfortably taking architecture, because then they can be a sole individual bread earner working independently as a freelancer. From academia standpoint, there is only about 17 to 20% of women who take up engineering in computer science or information technology as per the study. Right now, what happens is not everybody gets a job within that limitation. Although we have limited pipe supply, but then we don't have everybody getting the job. One, they may not have attended the interview because the parents may not want them to go and explore in the metropolitan cities. Two, probably they haven't cracked the interview because they haven't been given that enough cushioning as to how they crack the interview and all of that, right? That's when a lot of freshers stay behind from getting the job. So the idea is to make sure that we kind of upskill them and make sure they're corporate ready. That's from a fresher standpoint. Now, sabbatical. Now, women who've worked in metros and marriage has got them back to, let's say, tier 2 cities. And they don't know exactly where to go and join. Because for me, being in Hubli, I've realized a lot of women do not even know there's existence of small startups within Deshpande Foundation. As there is even BVB College, which has their incubation center. There are startups, but people barely know there are such startups who are willing to hire people who have some sort of experience in corporate. So the introduction to such startups and the women who we think are ready, reckon to start with their corporate, coming back to corporate or work, Women at Work initiative is what we're looking at. So there are two ways of looking at it. The proposal or the program we're looking at is how we make sure the freshers are carved better to get into the corporate, and then the women who are out of corporate taking sabbatical moved from tier 1 back to tier 2 cities and connect them with the right corporates, from a startups to services or product companies which are well established, so that they get their jobs.
It makes perfect sense. So let's try and make it a little more personal, right? Like, because I think we've all gone through this at some point of time. I remember when we had our first child, Pranjali had to take a break from work, and she took a couple of years off just to be with Sarah, and then a couple of years again to be with our second child. So a total of 4 years she's been out of, I think the workforce, and she did it by choice, right? So let's make it a little personal. I'm sure you all have stories to share from your own experience of careers and motherhood and other reasons as well, right? So Dimple, let me ask you this. Can you share something from your own experience about, what's been your journey within the career? What's been that growth? Have there been, times when you've had to take a break, as an example, right? Like, how did you navigate that part of your journey?
So I think I come from a section of where I don't think we were accepted as women to be forefront having a career. I think I come from that era, I would call it. Rugi, just chime in. I'm sure we are on the same page on that. So when I started off, it was more to be like, I'm going to be supporting my husband, right, in my career. I mean, whatever that means to be. So I was supposed to be the one in the house with the kids, like you mentioned, and I'm not supposed to be giving career as, my first preference. I think that soon changed because there were a few dynamics that changed in the personal front. And I happened to be the one that had to, take career as my main front. I have a 21-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. So there was been a big gap between them, which helped my career though. It gave me enough time to settle into my roles that I played. And what I largely did was, not being in India, being outside of India, I think the pressure of a motherhood plus a career is on the same plane, right? I don't think they have that imbalance there, like what we would have here, right? So I had enough time to give my child, plus I was, given enough sufficient time to look at my job on a career aspect as well. So I think it's been quite a journey, but, definitely effective to the way that others might look at it.
Right. You touched upon a very interesting topic, right? Like you come from a generation, or I think even all of us come from that generation, I suppose, right? Like where there's still vestiges of roles, right? Like, and I think there are biological reasons why certain roles are given to certain things, but keeping that aside, there are vestiges of a public perception that women are meant to do certain things and men are meant to do certain things, and you still see that happening, Rugi, when you meet with talent, when you meet with women. Is that how prevalent is that perception today in the 21st century?
So one step backward, Vishal, to the question which was posed earlier. I am not to the major class which belongs. I'll be very honest, my upbringing has been very different. I've never been treated like a girl, and then there's a boy, two separate things. So my parents were always sure that all three of us are treated equally. That helped me gain the confidence to move forward. Fortunately, my spouse, Viresh, has always been supportive, which is a rare case, a husband taking break in career. The day my daughter was born, it was his last day in his corporate. And for 1 year, he made sure he gave 100% to her because I was sure that I wouldn't take sabbatical. I told him 4 months is my maternity break. I'm going to go back to corporate. Come what may. So he says, okay, then you go ahead. I'll stay back. So there was good balance between us to make sure that I continue to be ambitious, and 100% support from the family, and therefore, proudly stand tall to a lot of women to look and say, okay, I learn a lot of it from you. Going back to the following question, right, in terms of how we see things are changing. We are here as women leaders. We always have battles, right? Like Dimple said, there were a couple of instances. It has happened to me as well. It's not that it is very clear and clean. We did go through a lot of tough situations, but we made sure we are heard. We made sure we never let go of our point of view or our ambition. In that case is where we kind of become a sort of role play or an example for other women to pick it from there. These conversations, these interactions will help the other women to make sure they continue to play what they want to and they choose to. So things are changing because there are a lot of stuffs out there on social media as to how people are being those dynamic women leaders or motivational leaders, and I think they're all picking parents are educated versus our days, right? Parents are pretty supportive nowadays. It's only single child, max 2 kids, and there's no difference between a male child and a female child. All of this is changing the entire way of looking at the spectrum.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Like, because I think what you're saying is that not only women need inspiration, but also possibly men need inspiration in a many, very ways, right? Like, so I mean, it goes both ways. And even parents need inspiration from others because they see something working. Part of it is, I think, as we grow up, we instill mindsets in us and we think that that's the only way things can happen, right? Until you see something else happen and what they traditionally call as the glass ceiling shattering. And it's been talked about in career terms, but even in societal terms, I think there is glass ceilings everywhere. And it shatters, and you need that inspiration, right, to move forward. And that's a really, really valid point. But how much of that is actually changing, Rugi? So when you're in talent acquisition, you're interviewing women all the time, you're probably coming with people who are trying to return back into the career. Where are the gaps?
So from the two aspects, because I've been talking about the freshers and then we're talking about the women who've already worked, right? From a fresher standpoint, there is a lot of cushioning from the parents. Like, when I see a lot of candidates when they come to my office, if parents are accompanied, there is high chances of my rejection because I feel the parent is not letting the child go explore. So my tip to most students out there, freshers out there, do not have to bring your parents for the interview. You come, you try to swim on your own. That's my tip, because that's when they will realize. And for experienced, I think, as I mentioned, most cases today, at least if I can take few names, Shilpa is one of them, and then I have another lady called Mamata, who actually worked in corporate in Bangalore. Marriage got them there to tier 2 city, to Hubli, Belgaum, and they chose to stay home for whatever reasons, to be the support to their husbands, right? Because the husbands are doing business. They are well equipped, they understand the corporate life, but they don't know, is this the right time or is this the right company? Because then they think there is a way of looking at tier 2 city companies versus the corporate in the metros. Because tier 2 cities are not as polished as the corporates in the tier 1 cities. So now things are shifting with people like us who are going back and trying to get those aspects in there from a training perspective, the corporate training perspective, leadership training perspective. Things are changing, but we're not there yet.
That's one of the main reasons why we took up this initiative, right, Nipuna, and we wanted to launch it. The north of Karnataka, right? Kalburgi is one of the main cities that we want to launch it at. Like she said, there is a resistance to join the tier 2 cities, but I think we want to revolutionize that, to say that, let's make sure that we have the right equipment, the right infra, the right training in place to make sure that we have that. So it's not getting concentrated at one particular city or a district, but it's well spread out and they get an equal opportunity where they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, right? Because I think if you think about India doesn't have shortage of land. It actually has got land. The challenge with India is that there's high population densities and concentrations in some areas and very, very sparse concentrations in the others. And now you've got investments from the government in terms of road infrastructure and airports at tier 2 and tier 3 cities and brilliant railway networks that are connecting all of this. So I'm optimistic that over a period of time, this would become a reality, and it's a necessary reality, right? Like I come from the state of Goa, and we've traditionally, even when we had to, and it's just not a woman problem or a man problem, right? Like it's a problem for talent. We've traditionally had to move out to find the right kind of opportunities back in the day. I'm talking about 25 years back. And I think this will go a long way in keeping people near their communities, hopefully contributing to their communities, creating the role models that you're talking about, right? And things like this will get them the opportunities there.
I think COVID made those changes quite a bit. It taught us how to be where we are and make it more sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine, courts were running online, right? Like, so stuff that I'd never imagined that a hearing would be done online in a Zoom call. You've seen that happen, right? Like, and if that can happen, then potentially there are other areas. Probably the journey is going to be slow, but over a period of time.
Yeah. So to one point about Nipuna, now with Nipuna initiative, McLaren has come forward, which will help a lot of, the fresher world, irrespective of the gender. But the point is that they are job ready eventually. Again, to a lot of companies offering remote job.
Yes.
Right? So that's where we kind of talk about the employability. We're able to scale up in terms of making sure that the gap is narrowed down.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. And I'd like to connect back to Nipuna, but I'll just sort of take a bit of a segue to just set the context, right? Like in the sense that what does it take to be successful? Like both of y'all are incredibly successful women. I've worked with y'all. I've seen how y'all operate. I've seen your career growth over the last maybe 20 odd years, I would think, right? Like it's been a long time since I've known you guys. And I'd like you to like put this lens on of talent succeeding. What does it take to succeed? We've obviously learned a little bit about how women face a different set of challenges, right? From the workforce. We talked about all of that stuff. But what does it take for talent to succeed in the workplace, the way y'all have? Y'all have run businesses, y'all have done social endeavors, y'all have contributed to society, you'll have run corporate jobs, you'll have grown up that corporate ladder, so to speak. What does it take for someone to succeed from a pure play career standpoint?
Sure. So one is the right, the momentum as a fresher. You start your career. Then from there on, it's about how hungry you are to learn and grow. That is an attitude. Now, for me, the attitude of my definition could be different from what is the attitude from your definition, right? For me, it's about making complete sense in being transparent and being proactive. That's about it. That will take a long way. I've seen my own team members, from my career standpoint, the time I've started taking leadership roles, being honest, being transparent, being proactive. Like if you have low work, you want to do more work, come ask for it. If you're not able to do it, this is stressing you out, come talk about it. Half of your battle is won.
Yeah.
Right? Ask for what you think you need and deserve, and things will fall in place. However, today, I am sure Gen Zs are creating a little bit of noise. The Gen Zs, right, soon after the training period, the moment you're on job, they're stressed. They're freaking out. So the patience level, the transparency, the proactive approach is kind of going down for whatever reasons. Now, let's not get there. But then the whole aspect, how the talent succeeds, for me, it's purely being available, being acceptable, adaptable. And that kind of with the right attitude, solves the problem and will take you a long way.
Makes sense. Are there values that McLaren stands for? So when you look at
Definitely.
hiring talent, right? Like when you look at bringing on talent within your company, I think that might be reflective of what somebody should follow. So I'm just curious to see what do you all stand for?
So let me start with what, got me where I am, right? I think being resilient to whatever comes by and being hungry for what you want to do and connecting with people. I think these three are the ones that have been my pillars of movement. And very much that was very similar to what McLaren was, being the last leg of where I want to be in my career. I was very sure that I want to partner with somebody who thinks on those same lines. And I think this is something that is very prominent with McLaren. And I think we keep reiterating that during our, pre-placement talks,
interviews,
everything, all the conversations, the pep conversations we'll have to do. So it is being hungry for where you want to be, right? And you need to be connected, you need to be accepting the other human being, respect them for what they are, plus you need to collaborate.
Yeah. You talked about, I think a bunch of things, right? Like, so you talked about resilience. You talked about adaptability. You talked about the hunger. You talked about the hunger to learn and contribute, independence. All of these things. A very common thing that comes with all of this, right, is failure. And when you club all of these together, comes one word called grit, right? And fortunately, I think it's amazing how it's connected both within yourselves with McLaren as well as myself, because with our company, the Grit City, our goal is to develop that layer of understanding or that level of skill. It's not even skill, right? Like it's something more foundational, because technically, if you've got that level fixed, then a skill is just a matter of training and possibly some experience, and it's skill development.
For the fact of the failure part that you spoke, and I think you've heard it multiple times with all the leadership, right? It trickles down.
Yeah.
Fail fast. right? So you pick it up and change your momentum, shift gears, go ahead. And I think that's what we've been doing, and we've seen results. When she brought up this aspect of the Gen Zs, right? They are seeing that a different way forward, right? They're coming with a different mindset. But when they see how McLaren works and how fruitful it has been in quick space, right? It has shifted their viewpoint.
I think so. I think so as well, right? Like, because I think one of the things that is different than the time we graduated is that there are many more opportunities now, right? So it's important for organizations to keep their employees intellectually challenged and contributing and growing monetarily, financially, intellectually, socially, emotionally, whichever way you think about it, to keep them engaged. Because otherwise there's a job waiting somewhere else at potentially a higher pay package than what any of us can offer them, right? And there is indeed a real demand for the really good talent, right? Let's get back to maybe KIDEM and the women's cell itself. So we're at a point where we talked a little bit about challenges, we talked a little about what takes to succeed. Where does this fit in? Where does this fit in? What types of skills? Is it just hard skills? Is it the skills around grit? Is it the skills around, do you also teach softer skills to people, the more human skills that sit below the grit or below the hard technical skills? How do they approach that problem? Because it's a combination of both, right? Like we talked about failure. People fail in careers, right? Like that's the reality of things. When you take risk, you fail against risk. And unfortunately or fortunately, even business risk is not perceived very well. I don't know if you saw the interview recently with Malya. I don't know if I agreed with a lot of things, but the one thing that I did agree with, because I've gone through it personally myself, right? A business failure is not considered a business failure as much in India, as much as it is as an example, Silicon Valley, right? In India, there's a taboo. It's considered a personal failure. And I've been at the receiving end, so not to defend the individual or to say that, but the certain elements that you resonate with. This one resonated with me. So many of us go through failures. How does Nipun address those level of challenges, or are there stuff that you at an individual level are doing? Is it part of Nipun? Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
So from a women,
The skill part.
So from Nipuna has no bars in terms of skills. Now you said about the hard skills and the soft skills. There's nothing like a differentiation. Whatever is required for the talent, and there is a corporate who's willing to take that up, they kind of bridge the gap. With Women at Initiative under KIDEM is also in a similar program, how we empower women to make sure they have a financial freedom. It could be through job, it could be through, starting your own office setup or being an entrepreneur. So the entire aspect is around whatever is required. So there are companies like McLaren, as we speak, right, is willing to come forward to make sure they offer help what is required, which is going to be a win-win situation. So it's more from both sides on an agreement.
Correct. So they're approaching, so if I understand it correctly, they're approaching it like a finishing school, at least for people who are...
And also meeting them where they are, Vishal, because it's not that you can put them up a bar and say, this is where you need to fit, or put them in a box, right? That's not what we want to, and I don't think Nipuna is also heading to it. It's more like an NGO setup where we look at upskilling with the skills that they already perceive and what they can upskill themselves to. So there is a series of things, right? They go through, a couple of tests, a couple of due diligence that they need to understand where they are. I think it's more to what I, as, an individual can offer, and what are the array of, the skills that are available that different companies are able to scale and pick them up.
So let me just sort of put the other lens of it, right? Like, because I think the challenge with, let's talk about women and Nipuna now, right? Like, rather than making it generic for everyone, it seems there are societal issues that are affecting, a woman to be as independent as maybe you were. I think, I would think, okay, I was just going to say it, right? Like, it feels like you'll have a certain level of, you're a little fortunate as well, right? Like because you got the right kind of options, the right kind of opportunities at the right time. In your case, you talked about the support from your parents, not just the support, right? Like just the encouragement, lack of differentiation. From your husband at the time you decided to, have a child, all of that stuff, you've got that level of support. And I think all of us are fortunate in that way to have that support. But many people don't have that support.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't have that support even to think about coming and scaling themselves. They're dealing with more primal issues like differentiation and all of these other things. So don't you think skill development initiatives need to be also complemented with social initiatives to make the full impact of, I think the objective is brilliant, right? Yeah. But it just feels like it could do with a little more support system to allow them to come in. So let's talk about the financial support. So let's say, for example, there's a lady who wants to get back into their careers and cannot afford. Is there any money involved to take on these courses? How does that work?
Government will support for the programs which the leaders, local cluster leaders want to do it. Like for example, in Hubli, Dharwad, Belgaum region and the cluster, we want to hold a job fair, right? So KDM team will help us sponsor for that job fair setup. And then, we talk to our connections from a corporate people to come and pick people, and KDM will also support. So the entire aspect is to make sure there is employability. For the example that you spoke about, the financial freedom. Going back to your question of probably people are not fortunate like as we are, but then it's also as we spoke about being hungry. It's to an individual. How much am I interested to get into this, right? End of the day, government of Karnataka, even government of India has so many schemes. Barely women know about it, right? How much of it am I going to use or probably take benefit of is up to me. So from these kind of initiatives, let it be job fair, the proposal has gone to KDM office in terms of doing mentoring sessions. Now, cluster-wise mentoring session and then, 1:4 ratio. We have a lot of women from corporate who are willing to give their time over the weekends. To the tier 2 city women who want to either start their career, restart their career, or get into business or an entrepreneurship journey and things like that. So mentorship program is one of them. Then the job fair, which we already connected upon, is also another aspect. Then we were talking about training. How do we make sure we upskill? There are a lot of redundant skills. Probably that's why they're shying away to give interviews. How do we make sure they kind of relearn and sharpen their skills to get better at what is the required skill set today? And everything is pretty easy with AI in place, right? So those are the things which KDM and Women at Work initiatives will help a lot of women to get back to work.
Got it. Are there infrastructural challenges? So as an example, you talked about online learning and being able to join online, and we're talking about tier 2, tier 3 cities. Are you seeing any infrastructural challenges, internet connectivity, those kinds of things, or is it generally getting better across the place?
It's definitely getting better now with the way that, the government wants to look at tier 2 cities or tier 3 cities. Infrastructure as well, KDM has come very generously, making sure that, they allot a particular place where we can do the training. But Vishal, coming back to the same point, right? It is just not a one-way. We have to make sure that all the sectors meet together. And I think it's very good initiative. It's a brilliant initiative by the government. It's come together. We're saying that, let's have academia, let's have corporates, let's all put our hands together. Plus, like how she was saying, there are a lot of people who want to give back to the community, their time. Right? So we as McLaren will try and seed those kind of initiatives in cohesive with the government. I think that's where we come in to bridge. And I think we will stand apart because I don't think many of them have taken this route, right? They have always looked at, but I would think personally, if we have to look at remote, I think it would come at a different pace and time. But in the start, right, for them to be in person, learn, right, from each other, be a part of the social team or a peer or, even with the corporates, it would give them a different level of learning. And I think it is at different stages that we can look at how we want to maneuver through what is required for that. But
it just seems like there's one piece of that puzzle that's missing, right? Like maybe even NGOs might be a good idea, right? Like women-focused NGOs. And since you're a social entrepreneur as well, so I might as well bring that up, because I agree with you, right? Like there's a certain level of hunger, but sometimes there is a mindset block as well, because of factors that are unrelated to the individual. And I think we got to be cognizant of that, right?
100%.
Not you see what I'm saying. So are you partnering with NGOs as well? People who are, as an example, marital abuse NGOs, right? Like people who have faced marital abuse and whatever, those kinds of issues. Are you partnering with NGOs as well? Seems like
It's going to be, again, couple of sectors in the NGO field, but since you've been in the corporate, right, Vishal, there are a lot of women, right, who want to give back.
Give back, for sure.
Right? And that would be where we are going to be tapping.
That's where you see the impact is.
Yes. I think the aspect of having NGOs would come more on a CSR aspect, which we would not want to bridge it here because, it happens to be that CSR and the Nipuna team will be on the same pace, right?
I see.
They both need that social help. They both need that upskilling. So we would target about women. Me being in corporate for more than 20 years, I have given always time apart from the time I spent at offices. And so has she, and so has, Pranjali and all of us, right? So that is where we would look at, the women giving back their time to upskilling them. Of course, infrastructure, whatever it takes to be there, McLaren is the one who's going to.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's very, very encouraging. So I wasn't quite aware of this ideas before I started learning about it as a part of this podcast. And it seems like it's extremely powerful if executed well, right? If people want to get involved, how should they get involved? So maybe, that might be an area to talk about in the last segment of this podcast before we wrap up.
Yes, we have partnered with, the IT minister and also with KDM, right? And they are all in it together with this. We are going to be making sure that, this is podcasted in ways and means in the most remote places that we could have to have this across, but also with academia, right? I think they would become a very strong partner for us to making sure this information travels seamlessly throughout. And of course, we have a lot of media work that...
Yeah, awareness, right? I think we almost come towards the end of this segment. It's been a brilliant conversation, right? But nothing to end in segment other than a story that actually reflects the values. So maybe I'll pull in Rugi, right? What's your... you've been working in this space for a while. Are there one or two stories that you could share, of the results that these initiatives, of sort of manifestation of those results?
Sure. So such programs will bring in a lot of efficiency in an individual versus the academia, right? As I already brought up the name Deepa, who's a BCom student but has kind of explored her job opportunity and career in, BI, business intelligence with, Tableau and Power BI through a course outside of her academics, right? And that outside of academics was through such program. And she's doing brilliantly well. Likewise, Mamata, again, who's a BCA, but, equivalent in terms of computer applications, but they don't have as much as in-depth knowledge, but she's a world-class AI, engineer out there in Tier 2 city. So these are a few examples. There are some of these gems hidden there, in these Tier 2 cities who we can pull as an example and start talking about so others get influenced.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. It was incredible talking to you ladies. I totally enjoyed the conversation. It was lovely to learn about Nipun, some of your personal journeys, change that Nipuna has been able to drive along with the women's cell, and also ways by which you could get involved or people can get involved. I'm very hopeful for McLaren's efforts in this area. I do hope that the efforts that you're putting in see fruition and that we're able to uplift the overall talent, not just in Karnataka, but hopefully across India. So thank you very much for your time. It was lovely talking with you all. And all the very best.
Thank you.